as you can see, I made it to the monkeys today, which I'm very happy about. I seem to have arrived at feeding time, so the monkeys are presumably inside somewhere. I don't see any of them in the enclosure. But it reminds me of something. When I was an undergrad, I did a couple of courses in primatology. And one of the things we did for this was a little mini study, a little zoo study. So we went to the zoo individually for every day for a few weeks and studied one aspect of primate behavior. Basically, we were trying to learn how to take notes properly, field notes. So I was doing mine on the feeding habits of captive gorillas. Because in the wild, a gorilla will spend the whole day eating. That's all they do. They wake up and then they just start rolling around and eating, just sitting around. They eat sort of bamboo shoots and little sprouts and tiny insects and stuff like that, but they do it all day because, you know, the food that they eat has fairly low nutritional value, so they have to basically eat a ton of food every single day. And they would do that for like 10-12 hours a day, you know, like just all day. But in a zoo, a couple times a day they get like a plastic box of yams or something like that, bananas and so on. And it takes them like 30 minutes, 40 minutes to eat that. But then, you know, they get bored because there's nothing to eat. Because, you know, I guess one of the pillars of being a gorilla is like that you spend all day eating. That's what you do if you're a gorilla, right? So what they do is they regurgitate the food that they've just eaten and then they re-ingest it. And they do this again and again, over and over again throughout the whole day. They're regurgitating the food that they've eaten and then they re-ingest it. This is something that gorillas in the wild do not do. No ape species habitually regurgitates its food and eats it again. It's fine if you're a cow because your esophagus is designed for that, for food to go in both directions. But just like us, imagine if you were vomiting like 20 times a day, you know. So it does harm to the gorillas to be like this. And it made me think, you know, that there's a similar aspect to my life. Not that I'm eating my sick, but, you know, I think as a human we have certain sort of pillars to what we are as humans that need to be satisfied. And you know, at a stretch one could argue that the way that we live in cities and so on, that we are sort of like captive humans in a way, and that the environment we live in is just not natural for us. And just like with the gorillas who get bored and then, you know, they're bored and maybe kind of rots into kind of anxiety, we get bored and we get a lot of anxiety. Not all of us. And in fact, not all of the gorillas in the zoo took part in this behavior of regurgitating and re-ingesting their food. But as humans, you know, when we have this kind of generalized anxiety, we drink too much, we eat too much, we take up any number of maladaptive behaviors, addictions, which are perhaps more to do with our environment than something innately wrong within us. When I think back now to seeing those gorillas sticking their fingers down their throats and vomiting on the floor and then slurping it back up again, I think, you know, they're doing that because something in them is not being met. They have some aspect of being alive as a gorilla that is just not there, namely the habit of eating all day long. I think maybe we need to look at the environment, the human environment, as much as anything else to understand why people develop mental health problems like addiction and anxiety. But being out here on the canal, it's my own little way, I guess, of getting myself out of my cage. And it's good. So I made it here for the halfway point today, and in fact I think instead of heading back to my cage I might just go a little bit more up that way and explore. Thanks for watching.